They found the letter and blood sealed under her pillow, words etched backward like a mirror hiding murder. The perfume still lingered, but there was no body, no sign of struggle, only silence. And a name that no one dared whisper after dark, Isabella Fairmont. There are stories buried so deep in history that even the families involved would pay fortunes to keep them forgotten. This is one of them. You've heard of the Gilded Age mansions, marble, champagne, silk gowns, but beneath the surface of Newport's polished silver and manicured roses festered a rot that money couldn't perfume, a rot of secrets, deals, and disappearances. And at the center of it all was one woman, Isabella. She was not just a socialite. She was a weapon of influence, her presence enough to sway the opinions of senators, bend the wills of industrialists, and seduce the machinery of empire. But power attracts predators, and what happened to Isabella wasn't random. It was engineered. You see, room 237 wasn't just any room in the Belmont Hotel. It was her sanctuary, but also her prison. And when she vanished from it in the early morning fog of March 15th, 1889, she didn't just leave behind pearls and silence. She left behind the unraveling of something much older, darker, and more dangerous than anyone was prepared to admit, because Isabella Fairmont knew too much. She knew about the back passages in the Vanderbilt mansions, built not for romance, but for blackmail. She knew about the sealed ledgers hidden beneath Bellecourt Chapel records that linked religious donations to arms deals and steel monopolies. She knew about the vault beneath Rosecliff Manor and what had been buried in it long before her, time. And when a woman like that falls in love with the wrong man trained in manipulation, with debts that no banker could explain, you don't get a scandal, you get a cover-up. This isn't about a missing woman, it's about a system. A centuries-old mechanism designed to silence those who step out of line. And Isabella? She didn't just step. She danced and read. They erased her. Sealed files, paid off cops, buried names. But the truth, the truth leaks. Through hotel walls, through hidden staircases, through unfinished letters written in invisible ink. And if you're still watching this, if your pulse hasn't betrayed you yet, know this. You're about to hear what she discovered. Once you hear it, you'll never see the world the same again. She was born Isabella Catherine Aldrich. But by the time she was 25, her name echoed through the corridors of East Coast power like a hymn of seduction and control. Her lineage traced back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. But her future was forged and steel-married into the Fairmont dynasty. One of the last American families to dine with European royalty and dictate the terms of war contracts from behind. Velvet drapes. But what no one told you, what they've worked tirelessly to suppress, is that Isabella didn't just rise by beauty or breeding. She was cultivated, groomed, weaponized. By the time she reached Newport in the summer of 1881, she already understood the currency of secrets. That silence properly leveraged was worth more than silver. And that meant especially the powerful. Ones rarely notice the blade when it comes wrapped in charm and lace. Her parties weren't frivolous. They were operations. Every invitation was calculated. Every guest list curated not for entertainment, but for leverage. A senator in one room, a banker in the next. A bishop sipping brandy just close enough to hear things not meant for his ears. And Isabella, always in the center, smiling, listening, cataloging. The world thought she was hosting soirees, but she was conducting reconnaissance. Behind the music and murmured laughter, deals were made, marriages arranged, investigations quashed. And somewhere along the way, Isabella stopped being just a Fairmont. She became a liability. You see, the elite don't fear scandal. They fear exposure, real exposure, the kind that breaks empires. And Isabella, whether by accident or intention, had compiled enough buried knowledge to detonate half the Gilded Age. The architectural plans Jonathan Pembroke shared with her weren't just blueprints. They were maps to the hidden arteries of America's aristocracy, tunnel systems between mansions, vaults with no official entry, chambers lined in lead, pervious to fire, sound, and scrutiny. Isabella kept records. She had journals, diagrams, initials etched into codes only she could decipher. Why? And when her affair with Pembroke turned from whispers to headlines, those journals became her shield. Or so she thought. Because in Newport, there are no safe houses, only illusions. By late 1884, the whispers weren't about passion anymore. They were about blackmail, about leverage, about whether Isabella was still in control, or whether she had become a pawn in a much older game where the rules are simple. If you speak the wrong truth, you vanish. There is a moment silent, sharp, when a woman stops being a figure of admiration and becomes a threat. That moment came for Isabella on a cold October morning when the New York Herald printed 6 words that would redefine her life. Newport's fallen angel. Fairmont's secret affair. But it wasn't the affair that destroyed her, no. Affairs were common among the elite. They were whispered diversions, used and discarded like last season's fashion. What made Isabella different, what made her dangerous, was what she knew. About the man she loved. Jonathan Pembroke wasn't a suitor. He was a cipher. A man without origin. His arrival in Newport had been too perfect. His credentials too polished. And though the newspapers called him an architect, his real work was construction of a different kind. Constructing trust, desire, vulnerability. Isabella, blinded by passion, or perhaps awakened by it, began slipping. Her meticulous social choreography faltered. She missed charity luncheons. She ignored calls from the Daughters of the American Revolution. She withdrew, locked away in Rosecliff Manor with a man who, by then, had already started feeding from her fortune. But here's the part they erased from the record. Isabella knew. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't naive. She had allowed Pembroke in. Why? Because he was a key. A reckless, beautiful key that opened doors no woman of her status had ever dared approach. Through Pembroke, she gained access to correspondence from European bankers, shipping manifests tied to opium roots, even whispered accounts of children disappearing from Providence. Orphanages sent to unnamed homes in the South under the guise of reform. She was mapping corruption far larger than infidelity. This was systemic, intergenerational, ritualized, the kind of corruption that wore crucifixes and Harvard rings, that smiled in church pews and met in shadowed lodge halls after midnight. By winter, she'd crossed the line, and the families knew it. Suddenly, the whispers turned surgical. Her guests stopped coming. Her accounts were quietly frozen. Letters vanished from her desk. The servants resigned without explanation. Even her mail was intercepted one. The Belmont doorman would later confess under morphine that he'd been paid to deliver her letters to a Mr. Blackstone before they reached their destinations, and yet Isabella didn't run. She prepared. She began copying names, ledger entries, estate records. She began sleeping with a dagger beneath her pillow. She knew the machine was turning, and she was about to be crushed beneath it. December 1st, 1884, the day Isabella Fairmont should have escaped. The trunk was packed, the documents hidden in the lining. A forged passport tucked into her corset bearing the name I.K. Alden. She was scheduled to board the Britannica at 6:40 p.m. from New York Harbor, bound for Europe, bound for exile, bound for silence. But she never arrived. The carriage she hired never reached the station. The driver, James Hallwell, was later found wandering in the outskirts of Brooklyn, disoriented, repeating the same phrase over and over. Her eyes turned black, and then she disappeared. Authorities dismissed it as delirium from alcohol. They always do. But Isabella hadn't run. She hadn't been abducted. She vanished by design or by force, I guess. And the truth of what happened in those final 24 hours is buried under so many layers of secrecy, misdirection, and institutional manipulation that even seasoned historians dare not touch it. The last confirmed sighting of Isabella was in room 237 of the Belmont Hotel. Witnesses say she was calm, composed. She'd ordered oysters and absinthe. She requested a fire be lit, though the weather didn't call for it. She asked for it. Fresh roses to be delivered, not white. She instructed only red. She was writing letters, some say over a dozen, but none were recovered. Only fragments burned in the great half-melted wax seals bearing crests, not listed in any known registry. Not American. Not European. Something ... older. And then she was gone. No witnesses, no struggle, no prints, no sign of forced exit. This is one final object left behind. A mirror smashed, not by accident, but deliberately, methodically, 7 sharp fractures radiating from the center. A coded symbol in certain circles, a sign that a ritual of severance had occurred, not of death of erasure. Because Isabella hadn't simply vanished from the room, she had begun vanishing from history. Newspapers published contradictory reports. First, she was seen boarding a ferry. Then she was spotted in a cab in Philadelphia. Then reports of suicide, always faceless. Bodies always inconclusive. The machinery of confusion was in full operation. You have to understand, this wasn't just about silencing a scandal. This was about deleting a woman who had wandered too far into forbidden corridors. A woman who had gathered enough evidence to dismantle dynasties. And that kind of truth isn't buried, it's neutralized. And if you're still with me, you felt it tightening in your chest. Comment this phrase twice below. Red roses don't bloom in the dark. Let them know you're no longer asleep. They say the past is dead, that it's a sealed room. But Isabella Fairmont proved something far more terrifying. The past is alive and it's feeding. When her disappearance became public, Newport society issued its official narrative, emotional instability. A woman overwhelmed by guilt, likely lost at sea. But beneath that polite obituary was a war of information. Because Isabella didn't just vanish, she had planted seeds. In her final weeks, she met in secret with individuals who had no place in her world. A former Pinkerton agent turned spiritualist, a Haitian priestess posing as a laundress, and an excommunicated Jesuit who lived in the attic of a Providence church. What did they all have in common? They dealt in ritual, in secrets, extractions of memory and identity. According to fragments found in her remaining journals, muggled out by her maid, later died in an asylum under mysterious circumstances. Isabella believed she had become the target of something much older than scandal or even assassination. She wrote, "They're not killing me, they're unmaking me. One piece at a time. Names I once remembered now slip like smoke through my mind. I am becoming a shadow of myself, not vanished, erased." And here's where the story takes a turn, one that makes historians, journalists, and family foundations uncomfortable. There's evidence quiet. Suppressed that room 237 wasn't just a suite. It was a chamber of inversion. A room used by a small elite group within Newport's highest families for memory trials, ritualized meetings where enemies were broken not by force, but by dismantling identity. 7 families, 1 ritual, generations old. Rumored to have roots in Rosicrucian tradition draped in the language of philanthropy, conducted beneath marble floors and behind bookshelves that didn't open with keys but with bloodline. It wasn't about revenge, it was about containment. Because what Isabella knew what she was becoming threatened not just reputations, but the very mechanism these dynasties used to remain in power. A machine of control, of selective amnesia, of shaping reality itself. She'd gotten too close. Her journals referenced something called the Order of the Fourth Gate, a name erased from every formal record, yet appearing again and again. In the hidden margins of elite estate documents and redacted court ledgers. Who were they? What did they guard? And more importantly, what did Isabella found behind that final gate? Because those who asked that question never asked again. By January of 1885, Isabella Fairmont was no longer just a missing person, was a forbidden idea, The whispers had gone underground. Servants who once gossiped over laundry baskets now spoke in coded glances. Newspapers, once hungry for scandal, were suddenly ... silent. Journalists who pressed too far were reassigned. Dismissed, or like Everett Brand of the New York Tribune, simply vanished during routine travel, in certain rooms, behind locked parlor doors. The name Isabella was still being spoken in panic, because she had done something unthinkable in her final weeks. She had mailed out copies. Before she vanished, Isabella sent sealed packages to 6 recipients, none of them in Newport, a banker in Chicago, a librarian in Salem, a professor at a defunct theological college in Tennessee, a blind bookseller in New York City, a seamstress in Savannah, and a postal clerk in Denver who died 3 weeks later under unknown circumstances. Each package contained a piece of what she called the mechanism. It wasn't a machine in the traditional sense. It was a pattern drawings, names, times, and dates. Architecture, bloodlines, newspaper clippings arranged in ways that revealed hidden links between some of America's wealthiest families and something else, something not bound to time or nation. A structure of control that passed down not just wealth, but ritual. The mechanism documented ancestral homes where children had vanished always during renovations. It showed property transfers between steel barons and unnamed trusts based in Swiss towns that don't appear on modern maps. And in the center of it all was a symbol Isabella drew repeatedly, a circle split into 4 quadrants, 1 black, 1 red, 1 blank, 1 filled. With thousands of microscopic eyes, she called it the 4th gate. Some believe she uncovered a society so ancient it predated the Constitution. Others think it was older than America itself, cult of continuity hiding beneath layers of bureaucracy, charity, and blood. And Isabella didn't just name names, she drew maps of tunnels beneath Newport churches, water channels that ended in dry sealed chambers, homes built with no second floor, on the A first and a third. The recipients of her packages began to disappear one by one. Fires, accidents, illnesses with no cause, but one survived. And what she revealed changes everything, because Isabella wasn't silenced for who she was silenced for what she became. Her name was Elisa Harrow, and she was the last one. The seamstress from Savannah, unmarried, childless, invisible to the elite by design. But Isabella knew her history, knew that her grandmother once served in the Fairmont household, that she'd witnessed a secret gathering in 1831, 12 men in black coats beneath a red curtain, chanting in a language no one speaks aloud anymore. Liza had been chosen because she was nobody, which meant she could see everything. And what she saw has haunted the hidden corners of American history ever since. In 1903, long after Isabella's vanishing, had become nothing more than a ghost story. Eliza submitted a sealed affidavit to the Library of Congress. It was never published, never reviewed, but it was misfiled, rather, under textile manufacturing records, until 1972, when a janitor with a background in symbology stumbled on it by mistake. What he found was a 47-page document, written in perfect cursive, detailing not just Isabella's final weeks, but something far darker, a gathering, held once every 13 years, in a subterranean chamber beneath the Newport Masonic Temple. Not on public record, not acknowledged even by the Masons themselves. Attended only by descendants of 7 families, the original architects of Newport's social order. The ritual was simple. The name was erased, real name recorded in a hidden book, known only to the bloodlines. And in exchange, the families retained power, wealth, memory, control over who rises, who is forgotten. Liza claimed that Isabella had infiltrated the 1884 gathering, disguised, cloaked, silent. She'd seen the book, touched it, and in doing so, something happened. Something that allowed her to remember everything she'd ever forgotten. Every silence, every shadow, every manipulation. That's when they turned on her, not to kill her, but to contain her. Because Isabella Fairmont once just another disobedient debutante, had become the most dangerous woman in America. She had decoded the mechanism. And worst of all, she'd started teaching others how to do it. Eliza's final note, written at the bottom of the affidavit in a trembling hand, reads, "The fourth gate is not a place. It's an act of refusal. A breaking of the mirror they used to trap us in our own reflection. She showed me how. And now I remember everything they tried to make me forget." That affidavit vanished in 1974, but a photocopy remains, circulating in the deepest layers of the Black Archives. You've seen the surface, but the next layer is where the real nightmare begins. The fourth gate isn't a room. It's not a tunnel or a book. It's not even the symbol etched into the inside of the old Fairmont crypt. The marble was deliberately cracked from the inside. No, the fourth gate is a rite of awakening, and those who cross it are never the same. After Elisa Harrow's affidavit vanished in 1974, strange things began happening in Newport again. Families started quietly selling off ancestral estates. 2 lineage churches mysteriously burned in one night. And a local historian, Daniel Reeves, drowned in less than 2 feet of water with no sign of struggle. But before he died, Reeves left behind something chilling. A letter never mailed, addressed to his colleague at Brown University. It's not just a cult. It's a control system older than religion, older than Rome. And Isabella didn't die. She ascended. She accessed something they've been guarding for centuries, something pre-human. I've seen the chamber. I've seen what's beneath the Masonic Lodge. There are carvings, impossible carvings. Things that pulse. It's not symbolic. It's alive. The Newport Historical Society still denies that such a chamber exists. But photographs surfaced in 1987 during a quiet estate. Sale photos never meant to be public. Stone corridors beneath. The city marked with sigils that matched the ones drawn in Isabella's journal. Black candles, iron hooks in the walls. Floor design nearly identical to the seal of the Society of Cincinnati, the secret order founded after the American Revolution. It gets worse. A 2001 excavation beneath a collapsed building revealed a sealed vault inside. Clothing from the 1880s, a torn dance card from the Fairmont Winter Gala, and a single item placed perfectly in the center, a woman's silver hand mirror shattered. Forensic analysis showed it had been broken from within. But here's the part that's never been publicly released. The vault door had only one word carved into it. Remember, Isabella was erased not because she threatened reputations, but because she threatened the spell, the enchantment that keeps the elite protected, the masses hypnotized, and history obedient. She found the gate, and more importantly, she left it open. They thought sealing the vault would be enough. They thought burning the affidavits, silencing the witnesses, collapsing the tunnel under the lodge they thought it would hold, but it didn't. By 2009, stories began leaking from people who had never heard of Isabella Fairmont or Donnery. People, a ferry worker in Narragansett who claimed to see a pale woman in antique clothing walking along the water before vanishing into the mist. A tourist who broke into an abandoned estate and emerged 3 hours later, speaking in backwards Latin and never speaking again. And then there were the dreams. Not hallucinations, not fantasies, shared visions. Dozens of unrelated individuals across Rhode Island described the exact same image. A ballroom filled with shadows, no faces, only hands, gloved and grasping hand. In the center, a young woman staring into a cracked mirror. And behind her, a fourth door. They would wake up gasping, bleeding from the nose, or in some cases, screaming a single word, Fairmont. Something had been reactivated. Researchers from fringe psychology programs began to call it the Newport effect. Sleep studies confirmed a spike in abnormal theta wave activity in areas around former elite properties. Several participants experienced transient amnesia, forgetting their own names. Families, even languages, only to recover days later with fragments of knowledge they couldn't explain. Maps, symbols, family trees traced to Europe before the Roman Empire. The mechanism was never just documents and maps, it was contagious knowledge. It's a kind that spreads like a virus when spoken aloud. And Isabella had weaponized it in the only way that could survive across centuries. Memory transfer through trauma. That's why they erased her, because she created a key. Not a physical one, but an experiential one. An encoded ritual embedded in dreams, symbols, stories. A key that allows people to see through the historical illusions they manipulated. Timelines, the missing census records, the architectural anomalies hidden in plain sight. And once you see it, you don't go back, because it's not just about Isabella anymore. It's about the ones who came before her and the ones who came after. The women who disappeared from social registers, children lost during sea, voyages that never happened. The ministers who went mad after entering basements that didn't exist on any blueprint. The fourth gate is open, and those who walk through it don't return as the same person. There's a reason you've never read about Isabella Fairmont in your history books. There's a reason her name doesn't appear on the passenger logs, the census rolls, or the inheritance ledgers. Because she wasn't just erased, she was surgically extracted from time itself, and yet she endures. Her legend lives in whispers and cracked mirrors, in dreams you swear aren't your own. Even today, the oldest families in Newport, remains of them still perform a ritual every 13 years. Not a ceremony, a containment. They call it the silencing. A gathering where names are removed from memory, not just of the living, but from documents, photos, stone, and bloodlines. All to preserve a single illusion that power is inherited and rebellion is madness. But Isabella proved otherwise. She discovered that memory itself could be weaponized, that the truth could hide in forgotten paintings, in mismatched architectural angles. In the inconsistencies between dreams and history. You want to know why this story is dangerous? Because if you remember her, if you, a stranger in another century, say her name aloud, you disrupt the ritual, you unmake the silence. In 2021, an anonymous whistleblower published a restricted dossier titled Operation Harrow. It contained satellite images of Newport properties with abnormal thermal retention, audio anomalies from inside sealed family tombs, and one photograph of a young woman dressed in 1880s fashion, standing behind glass, her reflection missing. Some claim it's an AI fabrication, others say it's a psyop. But those who've studied the fourth gate know Isabella left a part of herself behind, a living algorithm encoded in forgotten architecture, names, and trauma. Kind of psychic residue that can still reactivate. Not for everyone. It's only for those willing to see what they're not supposed to see. To feel what history tried to cauterize, to break the spell by remembering. So here's the final truth. Isabella didn't vanish. She crossed over, through the mirror, through the gate. And she's still there, waiting for others to see what. She saw, to speak the forbidden name. To follow her into the silence, and finally, wake up.